Perhaps at the end of the day, the deepest exhaustion does not live in the body, but in the stream of thoughts that never quite learns how to stop. Worries piling upon worries, questions without answers, and the quiet pressure to always understand. Always control, always keep pace with the world, all of it blending into a kind of noise that is difficult to name. This video does not come to resolve any of that. It simply opens a slower space where you are not required to do anything at all. In Drift into Sleep, while the universe breathes, you are gently invited into a very light journey, a place where philosophy is no longer a rigid system, but a whisper carried through the night. Here, ideas about the universe consciousness and the nature of being human are told like a breath slow deep and without demanding focused attention. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. You do not need to remember what is said. You do not need to understand it completely. Simply listen as you might listen to a distant movement of the universe itself, where galaxies breathe, stars grow old, and everything continues on even as you allow yourself to rest. If something touches you, let it do so very gently. And if nothing does, then sleep itself is already a complete and sufficient answer. There is a very different way to imagine the universe not as a cold machine running on indifferent laws, but as a vast living body where every movement is bound together by silent rhythms. If we look long enough into the center of a galaxy, we do not see light, we do not see form, we do not see any familiar signs of life. And yet it is precisely there in that near absolute darkness that something exists which could be called an invisible heart. Supermassive black holes have long been told as cosmic monsters, devourers of everything, symbols of merciless destruction. But when science settles beyond that instinctive fear, another image slowly emerges. These black holes do not only take, they regulate. They keep galaxies from growing too fast, from burning themselves out too early, from collapsing into chaos. Like a heartbeat no one can hear, but if it were to stop, the entire body would fail. This invites a very old question, one that has never ceased to matter: what truly keeps things alive, not only in the universe, but within human beings themselves. Is it light expansion, constant growth, or is it precisely the dark regions that know how to limit, to hold back, to slow the rhythm just enough so that everything does not consume itself? Philosophy has long doubted the idea that life is sustained only by moving forward. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." If the universe is a living organism, then it too must need pauses, contractions, dark centers where energy is redistributed rather than allowed to explode without limit. Carl Jung, speaking of the human mind, did not see darkness as an enemy either. He wrote in Ion, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Perhaps the universe operates in the same way, not by erasing darkness, but by placing it where it belongs, at the center where it can quietly do its work. As you listen to this story at night, you do not need to imagine numbers, equations, or distant images. Simply feel one very simple truth: even in the darkest regions there is order. Even when you cannot see the direction, there is still a pulse holding everything together. And perhaps like the universe itself, you do not need to shine brightly in order to be allowed to exist. You only need to keep breathing slowly, deeply, and let that invisible rhythm do the rest. In the popular imagination, black holes often appear as cosmic vacuum cleaners, bottomless mouths pulling everything toward themselves, swallowing light matter, and even order itself. This image easily gives rise to fear because it touches something deeply human. The anxiety that there are forces in life quietly dragging us along without asking permission, without offering explanation. Yet science, when listened to slowly enough, tells a different story. A story less dramatic, but far gentler and far more accurate. In truth, black holes do not suck anything in. They do not actively pull the world toward themselves. They do one very simple thing: they exist with their mass. The gravity they generate at a sufficient distance is no different from the gravity of any other object with the same mass. If the sun were suddenly to become a black hole of equal mass, an impossible assumption but a useful one for imagination, the Earth would continue to orbit exactly as it does now. No cosmic panic would unfold, no sudden pull, only familiar paths continuing on as if nothing had changed. This may sound contrary to what we have long believed, and perhaps that is precisely why it deserves reflection. We often fear what we misunderstand, and when a mistaken image is repeated long enough in films and sensational stories in the collective imagination, it slowly becomes an emotional belief even when it no longer holds up against reality. Science fiction needs drama in order to tell its stories. It needs uncontrollable forces, colossal threats, spectacular destruction. But real science, like philosophy, does not rush. It does not seek to shock. It seeks to be correct. And that correctness sometimes brings with it a very different feeling, not fear, but reassurance. When we understand that black holes are not wandering agents of destruction, we begin to notice a subtle resemblance to our inner lives. There are sorrows, memories, and dark regions of the mind that are often treated as vacuum machines, things that will drag us down if we come too close. But like black holes, they do not actively destroy. They simply exist carrying their own weight. Only when we rush straight into them without distance, without orbit, do we find ourselves pulled away. Between science and science fiction, the boundary is not only about facts, but also about how fear is treated. Fiction amplifies fear to create intensity. Science reduces fear by placing it where it belongs. And philosophy, somewhere between the two, invites us to remain long enough to realize that most of what we worry about is not as dangerous as we imagine. It is simply misunderstood. Baruch Spinoza once wrote in Ethics, "Fear arises from the imagination of a future or past thing whose outcome we, to some extent, doubt. Fear is born from imagination when certainty is absent." And black holes for centuries were precisely such a space, an empty canvas upon which imagination was free to paint. As science began to measure, observe, and listen to the universe with more refined instruments, the image of black holes slowly changed. They were no longer hungry mouths. They became boundary points, places where familiar laws cease to function, not to destroy, but to remind us that our understanding has limits. And perhaps accepting those limits is itself a form of peace. From here, the story can drift very gently in another direction. If black holes are not destroyers, what made us believe they were for so long? Perhaps because humans tend to assign intention to everything. We are used to thinking that if something has great power, it must want to do something to us. But the universe does not operate by intention. It operates by relationships, by distance, by balance. And when we allow ourselves to see the universe this way, a softening occurs. Forces once seen as threats begin to resemble rhythms, neither good nor bad, simply necessary. Just as in life, not every pressure exists to break us. Many pressures simply hold things together, keeping them from falling apart. At this point, a very slow movement can be felt within the stream of thought. No more hurried corrections, no more effort to understand everything. Only a quiet permission for old images to fall away and for new understandings to appear without argument. If black holes were once symbols of destruction in the collective imagination, then understanding them correctly is not only a victory for science, but also a quiet lesson in how we face the unknown. Instead of fear, we can stand at a safe distance, observe, and allow things to be what they are. And as you listen to these words at night, perhaps what matters most is not remembering that black holes do not pull the Earth in. What matters more is the feeling that not everything dark is aimed at you. Some things simply exist carrying their own weight, asking nothing of you at all. Between slower breaths, between thoughts that gradually thin out, this story can close very gently, not with a conclusion, but with a pause. And within that pause, like the universe itself, you too may continue to exist without needing to understand anything more. After understanding that black holes are not wandering destroyers of the universe, the stream of thought can drift into a deeper layer, lighter, yet far more subtle. For if black holes do not merely take away, then perhaps the more meaningful question is not how much do they consume, but what they are doing to the entire system around them. And here science begins to speak in a language very close to human life, the language of breath. Observed long enough, astronomers realize that supermassive black holes are not silent at all. They are not passive regions of darkness. From their poles, immense jets of matter and radiation are launched, stretching thousands, even millions of light years into space. These jets are not signs of hunger, but resemble a cyclical release of energy. Matter falls in, then energy is pushed out, drawn inward, then released. A rhythmic movement, slow and steady, repeating over spans of time so vast that the human mind can barely hold them. It is here that the metaphor of a galaxy's breath becomes clear. Like the lungs of a living body, a black hole does not keep everything. It allows energy to pass through to be transformed and then return to the surrounding environment. When cold gas in a galaxy begins to condense too quickly to form stars, these energy jets heat it up, not enough to destroy it, only enough to slow it down. And through that slowing, the galaxy avoids burning itself out in uncontrolled growth. Breathing in too quickly causes dizziness. Breathing out too forcefully leads to exhaustion. Life, whether on a biological scale or a cosmic one, seems always to depend on rhythm. Not more, but timely. not stronger, but just enough. At this point, science and philosophy meet in a remarkably natural way. Philosophy has long questioned the idea that healthy life means constant expansion. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Yet that chaos, if left unregulated, gives birth to no star at all. It gives birth only to dissolution. In this role, the black hole is no longer a symbol of endings, but a keeper of rhythm. It does not allow a galaxy to fall asleep in perfect stability, nor does it allow it to explode into self-destruction, like a deep breath taken in the middle of the night, preventing suffocation yet also calming panic. And if we allow ourselves to pause for a moment with this image, it becomes difficult not to think of the human mind. We too have matter accumulating within us, emotions, memories, thoughts not yet digested. If we hold onto everything, we become heavy. If we release everything at once, we become depleted. What is needed is not elimination, but cycles, a way of breathing for the mind. Carl Jung once wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, "The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. The mind does not move in a straight line. It oscillates." And within that oscillation, what keeps us from falling into extremes is regulation, the ability to let some things pass without holding on and to allow some things to remain without amplifying them. Returning to the universe, we see that the energy jets from black holes do not randomly destroy their surroundings. They create gentle shock waves spreading through interstellar gas, redistributing energy like very slow vibrations in a colossal body. Through this, a galaxy can continue to exist for billions of years, rather than blazing brightly and fading away in a brief moment of cosmic history. There is a very quiet comfort in this discovery, because it shows that life is not sustained by avoiding all-powerful forces, but by engaging with them. Not by extinguishing energy, but by guiding it to the right place. Here, the stream of thought can slow a little more. No more data is needed. No more examples. Simply allow the image of a breathing galaxy to remain in the mind, very distant, very slow, very steady. Each time the black hole breathes out, future stars are delayed so they are not born too soon. Each time it breathes in, energy is gathered back toward the center, preparing for a new cycle. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us in Meditations, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are, and to make new things like them." That change is not blind chaos. It has rhythm. It has breath. And as you listen to these words in the night, you do not need to imagine jets of matter or spiraling galaxies. It is enough to recognize that on some level, the act of breathing in and out right now is not separate from that larger story. The universe is breathing, the galaxy is breathing, and so are you. If something within you feels too hot a thought, a worry, a question without an answer, perhaps it does not need to be extinguished. Perhaps it only needs to be warmed in a different way, slower, gentler. Like gas between the stars, held in a state just sufficient to delay the birth of something new, yet not so little that it disappears. At the end of this flow, there is no conclusion to remember. Only a very thin feeling remains that life does not require you to shine constantly. Sometimes what keeps you alive is simply a steady breath repeated in the darkness long enough for everything to find its own balance again. After imagining black holes as the silent breath of a galaxy, the stream of thought can move one step further, not to heighten drama, but to clarify a very gentle paradox. If those black holes did not exist, what would happen? This question does not carry the shape of immediate catastrophe. Instead, it opens a slower, quieter scenario, and for that very reason, one far more worthy of reflection. Without supermassive black holes at their centers, galaxies would not explode right away. They would continue drifting, continue shining. But gradually, another phenomenon would appear, one that astronomers describe with a rather cold name, zombie galaxies. Not dead yet, no longer truly alive. These galaxies have consumed nearly all of their cold gas to form stars. Stars are born too quickly in too great a number over too short a span of time. And then when the fuel is exhausted, star formation stops. No new stars. Only old light growing fainter with time. This feels strangely familiar, because it resembles a life pushed too quickly forward, one where all energy is spent on growth achievement and becoming without any force strong enough to slow the pace. At first, everything is radiant. Then comes fatigue, and finally emptiness. In this context, black holes are not killers. They are what prevent self-destruction through excess. By heating the surrounding gas by releasing jets of energy, they delay star formation not to forbid it, but to keep rhythm, to prevent a galaxy from burning through its future in a single brief burst. From here, another gentle question arises. Why is controlled destruction necessary for life? At first glance, this seems contradictory. Yet nature, from cells to ecosystems, has always operated this way. Old cells must die so new ones can emerge. Forests must burn to a certain degree in order to regenerate. Without death at the right time, life suffocates itself. Philosophy reached this paradox long ago. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" What is often overlooked, however, is the word ready. Not every fire is regenerative. Only fires that are limited, placed within the right cycle, avoid becoming meaningless destruction. In the universe, black holes quietly fulfill this role. They do not exist everywhere. They exist at the center, and from the center they influence outward not through violence, but through balance. They allow galaxies to live longer precisely by not allowing them to live too fast. Amid these reflections, the narration can slow a little. No more cosmic examples are needed, because by now the story has reached a deeper layer, one where we are no longer speaking about stars and gas, but about how humans often misunderstand life itself. We are used to thinking that more is better, brighter is healthier, faster is more successful. Yet the universe at the largest scale we know whispers something else. Life needs limits in order to endure. Carl Jung once wrote in The Undiscovered Self, "Life has always seemed to me like a plant that lives on its rhizome. Its true life is invisible. The true life of a galaxy does not lie in its brightest stars, but in the invisible mechanisms that keep them from all igniting at once. And like human beings, what allows us to continue is not our moments of intensity, but the quiet forces that hold us back when we are about to go too far. Without black holes, galaxies are not killed. They are depleted. And this is a death without drama, without a clear ending. It is a gradual erosion of the ability to create something new, a state of prolonged existence without a future. Zombie not because of a lack of motion, but because of a lack of cycles. Here science and healing meet very gently, because many of us do not collapse because of a single great disaster. We become exhausted by consuming everything too quickly, energy, emotion, meaning. We are not destroyed, we are drained. And what is missing is not motivation, but a force strong enough to say, slow down. Marcus Aurelius once noted in Meditation's loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. Yet change is not always a forward movement. Sometimes it is a timely pause, allowing one part to end so another may continue. When black holes heat gas and prevent stars from forming too early, they create a waiting space. And within that waiting, the future is preserved not by holding on to everything, but by not allowing everything to happen at once. The stream of thought can close very softly here. No grand conclusion is needed. Only one final image, a galaxy existing more slowly darker at its center, yet living longer because of it. And perhaps as you listen to this in the night, you do not need to remember black holes or zombie galaxies at all. It is enough to feel that not every pause is a failure. Some pauses are the condition that allows life both in the universe and within yourself to continue far into the future. After passing through the question of why controlled destruction is necessary for life, the stream of thought can settle into an even deeper moment, the moment of a black hole's birth. Not with a thunderous explosion as we often imagine, but through a very quiet collapse taking place where light has already finished its work. Every stellar mass black hole begins with a star, but not just any star, only those that are large enough, heavy enough, and solitary enough in their fate. For most of its life, a star exists through a fragile balance between two opposing forces: gravity, which tries to pull everything inward, and the energy from nuclear fusion in the core, which pushes outward. It is a state of false stability, not peaceful, but tension held at exactly the right level. For millions, even billions of years, the star continues to burn its fuel, transforming hydrogen into helium, then into heavier elements. Each reaction is an act of resistance against its own weight. But eventually the fuel runs out. The stellar core no longer has enough energy to hold itself up, and when that balance is lost, there is no warning, no chance to turn back. Gravity wins. The collapse unfolds faster than imagination can grasp. The star's immense mass rushes toward the center. The outer layers rebound outward in a supernova, one of the brightest events the universe has ever known. In that instant, the star does not die in silence. It leaves traces behind, scattering heavy elements into space, fragments of matter that will one day become planets, oceans, and perhaps even life somewhere far away. But the core cannot escape. If its mass is great enough, it continues to collapse, passing beyond every intermediate state. No neutron star remains, no familiar structure, no surface. Only a region where space and time are bent so extremely that even light cannot leave. A black hole is born not as a new creature, but as the inevitable result of there being nothing left to oppose gravity. There is a very gentle paradox in this story. Black holes are not born from emptiness. They are born from excess. From too much mass, too much matter, too much being compressed into a single point. They are not symbols of nothingness, but symbols of limit, the point at which all familiar structures can no longer hold. Philosophy has long been familiar with the idea that there are moments in life when continuing in the old way becomes impossible. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." But perhaps what matters more is this: the abyss does not arise from nothing. It appears when everything has been compressed too tightly, when there is no longer any space left to breathe. Here, the story of black holes comes very close to the story of human beings. We too live through periods of fragile balance. We burn our energy to keep things running. We maintain form roles meaning. But without pauses, without release, there comes a point when what happens is not a gradual weakening, but a collapse. Not because we are weak, but because we have carried too much. Carl Jung once wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos in all disorder, a secret order. A supernova may look like absolute chaos, yet it is part of a larger order. The black hole born from it is not a mistake of the universe, but the logical continuation of a process that has reached its limit." Seen this way, the birth of a black hole no longer feels tragic. It resembles a transformation. The star can no longer exist as it once did, so it exists in another way, no longer bright yet still influential, no longer radiating heat yet shaping its surroundings, no longer present in familiar form, yet not gone at all. Within this flow of thought, a very quiet comfort can be felt, because it shows that endings are not necessarily failures. Sometimes an ending simply means that one form of life has completed its role. The elements the star created continue their journey, and the black hole born from the collapsed core becomes a regulating center for an even larger system. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "In meditation, nature does nothing uselessly." If this is true, then even the most violent collapse has its place, not for meaningless destruction, but to open the way for other structures to exist longer, more sustainably. At the end of this current, the story can slow to a gentle rest. There is no need to reimagine the explosion. No need to remember the terms. It is enough to hold on to one thin feeling that even things born from collapse can carry order and meaning. And if there is a part of you that once collapsed that could no longer hold its former shape, perhaps that was not an ending. Perhaps like a very massive star, you were simply shifting into another way of being, quieter, deeper, and strong enough to hold what surrounds you for a very long time to come. After touching the moment when black holes are born from the collapse of massive stars, the stream of thought can move even farther back, not toward the future, but toward the earliest age of the universe, when there were no stars, no galaxies as we know them, and everything remained unformed. In that very early place, before the first stable light existed, ancient seeds were already present, silent, heavy, and carrying within them the capacity to shape the entire structure of the universe that would follow. Not every black hole needs a star in order to be born. In the young universe, there were enormous regions of gas, vast clouds of hydrogen and helium, stretching across hundreds of light years that had not yet fragmented into stars. When conditions were dense enough, cold enough, and undisturbed, these clouds collapsed directly without passing through a stellar phase. No supernova, no brilliant light. Only a very rapid, very deep contraction from which a black hole with a mass thousands, even hundreds of thousands of times that of the sun emerged from the beginning. These black holes were not loud. They appeared in silence, as if the universe itself was not yet ready to tell its story. And for that reason, they are often overlooked in the human imagination, which is drawn instinctively toward whatever shines. Yet in cosmic history, the forces that shape most profoundly are often the ones that emit no light at all. The early universe was chaotic in a way very different from how we usually imagine chaos. There were no rapid motions, no constant violent collisions, only very small differences in density slowly amplified by time. In places where matter was slightly denser, gravity began to work. And if the mass was large enough, coherent enough, and not broken apart by star formation collapse, would happen in a single complete event. These primordial black holes became the first gravitational centers, places where surrounding matter began to gather. Over time, they grew not through violence, but through steady presence. They attracted gas dust and then stars. Around them, the first galaxies formed, orbiting these dark nuclei the way thoughts orbit an unnamed, deeply held belief. Here, the story of the universe begins to resemble a very human one. There are things within us that form very early, before we even have language to name them. Seeds of personality, of fear, of longing, often not born from dramatic events, but formed during quiet, dim, barely remembered periods. And yet, throughout life, everything seems to revolve around them. Carl Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "The decisive moments in human life are often unconscious. Perhaps the universe is the same. Its most decisive moments do not occur when everything is already bright and visible, but when everything is still vague, still unobserved." In this sense, primordial black holes are not only the physical ancestors of today's supermassive black holes, they are the structural foundations of all galactic history. Without them, explaining why supermassive black holes appear so early in the universe becomes difficult. With them, the story gains coherence. The universe planted its seeds very early, then waited patiently for billions of years to see them grow. Philosophy has long been familiar with the idea of quiet beginnings. Baruch Spinoza wrote in Ethics, "All things excellent are as difficult as they are rare. What is rare and enduring is rarely born from noise. It arises from conditions that are precise, subtle, and easily overlooked. As the stream of thought drifts from physics into contemplation, a gentle comfort can be felt. For if the largest structures in the universe are built upon dark seeds, then perhaps not every part of us needs to be illuminated immediately. Some parts only need to be allowed to exist long enough, quietly enough, to one day become centers around which other things can turn." The supermassive black holes we observe today, the invisible hearts of galaxies, may carry within them the memory of a very early time when the universe itself did not yet know what it would become. They stand as proof that a beginning does not need to be clear in order to be meaningful. It only needs to be in the right place. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us in Meditations, "What stands in the way becomes the way. What initially appears as darkness, as obstruction, becomes the path through which everything else passes." Primordial black holes, once seen as anomalies, are in fact the pathways through which galaxies formed, through which order emerged from a very young universe. At this point, the narration can slow even further. No more scientific detail is needed, no more hypotheses. Only one thin feeling remains, that what is born in silence may carry the longest-lasting strength. And if there are parts of you that have never been named, never brought into the light, perhaps they do not need to be fixed. Perhaps they are simply seeds waiting for time, waiting for space to one day become the center around which your life can turn. As this story closes in the night, there is no conclusion to carry with you. Only a very gentle permission to allow the deep, dark, ancient parts within you to continue to exist as the universe once did, long enough for them to complete their quiet role. After passing through the universe's ancient seeds where black holes were planted from the very beginning, the stream of thought can take one more step, not outward, but inward. For there are places that do not open through distance, but through the depth of a question. The internal structure of a black hole is such a place, not a map to be explored, but the boundary of what can be understood. First comes the event horizon, a concept that sounds poetic, yet is rigorously precise in physics. It is not a wall, nor a surface. It is an invisible boundary from which no signal ever returns. Light crosses it not because it is weak, but because there is no longer any path leading outward. From the outside, nothing can be seen of what happens beyond that horizon. Time appears to slow, then come to a halt. The last event ever recorded is nothing at all. Here, the universe offers a very quiet lesson. Not every boundary is marked by violence. Some boundaries exist purely through absolute silence. And when we cross them, whether in space or in life, what is lost is not ourselves, but the ability to return and tell the story in the old way. Closer still, yet remaining outside, lies the photon orbit, where light is held in a strange loop. Their particles of light neither fall in nor escape. They circle the black hole caught between two decisions. This region is delicate, unstable. A tiny disturbance is enough for the light to fall into darkness or escape forever. There is something deeply human in this image. Moments when we hover between two directions, not yet ready to let go, yet unable to continue as before. We circle within our own thoughts not because choices are lacking, but because we have not accepted the consequences of choosing. The light here is not lost. It is simply waiting for a very small force to end the loop. Philosophy recognized such suspended regions long before science did. Soren Kierkegaard wrote in The Concept of Anxiety, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Suspension is not weakness. It is a sign that we are very close to a boundary where freedom and loss touch. But if we go even farther beyond light, beyond all familiar points of reference, we reach the gravitational singularity where equations lose their meaning, where density becomes infinite, where space and time are no longer separate concepts. This is not a place that can be described by images. It is a whole in understanding itself. The singularity is not an object. It is a signal that our theories have reached their limit. Physics does not collapse because the universe is irrational, but because our tools are no longer sufficient. And in that moment, science becomes humbly beautiful. It does not pretend to know. It stops. Perhaps this is where science and philosophy meet most clearly. Ludwig Wittgenstein wrote in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, whereof one cannot speak thereof. One must be silent. There are things that are not mysterious because they are hidden, but because they cannot be expressed in the language we currently possess. Silence in this case is not failure. It is honesty. When we hear about the internal structure of black holes, we are easily drawn into a sense of alien distance. But if we listen slowly enough, we may realize that this story is not only about the universe, it is about human limits, about regions of the mind that cannot be fully illuminated, memories that cannot be retold, experiences that cannot be explained, pains that cannot be traced to a clear cause. Carl Jung wrote in the Red Book, "The soul is a world of endless vastness, and within that world not every structure can be mapped. Some parts can only be passed through, not fully understood." At this point, the narration can gently reconnect with what came before. If black holes are born from collapse, if they keep rhythm for galaxies through silent breath, then their internal structure reminds us that not every center exists to be explored. Some centers exist to set limits, to say, this is far enough. Marcus Aurelius noted in Meditations, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Perhaps what makes black holes frightening is not their nature, but the human impulse to understand everything completely. And when understanding reaches its edge, we panic. But if we allow ourselves to see differently, a softening occurs. Black holes do not demand that we enter them. They exist simply as reminders that the universe does not need to be fully grasped in order to have order. And human beings are the same. We do not need to understand every part of ourselves in order to be allowed to rest. The stream of thought can slow here. No more details are needed. No more concepts. Only one final image remains, an invisible boundary where light stops, not because it is extinguished, but because it has reached the end of its path. And as you listen to these words in the night, perhaps what matters is not remembering the names of the regions inside a black hole. What matters more is the feeling that not understanding everything is not a deficiency. Sometimes it is precisely what allows the mind to loosen its grip, to set its questions down very gently, and sleep as another form of understanding can arrive on its own in peace. After going deep into the inner structure of black holes, where the boundaries of understanding begin to blur, the stream of thought can widen again, not to escape, but to take in a fuller view. For black holes do not exist in only one form. They appear in the universe at many different scales, like low and high notes within the same long, slow piece of music. And each type of black hole in its own way fulfills a different role in the larger story of the cosmos. First are stellar mass black holes, the smallest black holes by cosmic standards. They are born from the collapse of massive stars, as we have listened to in earlier parts. Their masses usually range from a few to several tens of times that of the Sun. They do not sit at galactic centers. They wander through spiral arms, through dense stellar regions, like deep but localized memories, unable to shape an entire person, yet powerful enough to affect whatever comes too close. Stellar mass black holes rarely capture the popular imagination. They are not hearts, not centers of power. And precisely because of that, they resemble many quiet forces in life. Individual experiences, personal turning points, private pains that no one else sees. They do not shape the whole universe, but for whatever falls within their orbit, their influence is real. Scattered between these types is a more mysterious group, intermediate mass black holes. Heavier than stellar black holes, yet not reaching the scale of the giants at galactic centers, their existence was long debated. They are not easy to observe, not easy to classify. But it is precisely this elusiveness that makes them compelling. Intermediate mass black holes are often found in dense star clusters or formed through the merger of many smaller black holes. They resemble transitional stages, no longer a beginning but not yet a center. In the cosmic flow, they testify that growth does not always occur in leaps. Sometimes it unfolds through overlapping steps, slow, quiet, and unnoticed. Philosophy is deeply familiar with such in-between states, periods when one is no longer who one was but has not yet become someone new. Soren Kierkegaard wrote in The Sickness Unto Death, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." Perhaps intermediate mass black holes are like this as well. Only in retrospect do we recognize their role in linking different scales of the universe. And then at very deep, very dark, very stable centers, there exist supermassive black holes. These black holes weigh millions to billions of times the mass of the Sun and reside quietly at the centers of most large galaxies. They do not move much, they do not need to. Entire systems revolve around them not because they command, but because of the weight of their presence. Supermassive black holes are not merely large objects. They are anchors. As we have heard in earlier parts, they regulate star formation, preventing galaxies from growing too fast or falling into chaos. They do not create light directly, but they determine which light will be born when and for how long. If stellar mass black holes resemble individual memories and intermediate mass black holes resemble transitional phases, then supermassive black holes are very much like foundational beliefs within a human being. Things that do not appear often in daily thought, yet quietly determine the structure of an entire life. We do not see them, but we live within their orbit. Carl Jung wrote in Psychological Types, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In this sense, supermassive black holes are the unconscious of a galaxy. Unseen, unlit, yet governing all motion around them. When the three types of black holes are placed side by side, what appears is not a dry classification, but a spectrum of roles. From local to central, from short-term to long-term, from small immediate influences to foundational enduring forces. The universe does not choose a single type. It uses them all, each in its proper place. Here, the stream of thought can grow very gentle, for it suggests that not every force in life needs to become a center in order to matter. Some forces only need to be present at the right place at the right time. Some experiences only need to be deep enough to shape a portion of the path, not the entire journey. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything suits me that suits your designs, O universe." The universe does not operate through uniformity, it operates through distribution. And it is this distribution that creates order. As you listen to the story of black holes at night, there is no need to remember numbers or terms. It is enough to hold on to one thin feeling that difference in scale does not mean difference in value. Some things are vast, yet intervene very little. Some things are small, yet leave deep marks. The narration can close very softly here, not with a conclusion, but with an acknowledgement that the universe in the way it creates and distributes black holes seems to whisper something gentle. Every force has its place. And perhaps when you feel that you are not the center of everything, that does not mean you are without meaning. It may simply mean that you are fulfilling a different role, quiet, enduring, and enough to keep a part of the world turning. After seeing black holes at every scale, from wandering stellar mass objects to the giants at the centers of galaxies, a very natural question slowly rises to the surface without urgency, without demanding an immediate answer. Do black holes die? This question is not only a question of physics, it touches something deeply human. Is anything truly immortal, or must everything, even what is dark, heavy, and seemingly eternal, eventually reach an end? For many decades, science believed that black holes could not die. Once formed, they would exist forever, growing only by consuming more matter. This image fit well with our intuition about power. What is strong enough will never disappear. And then very quietly an idea appeared, not from telescopes, but from equations, the idea of Stephen Hawking. Hawking radiation is unlike any familiar form of radiation. It does not emerge from inside a black hole, but from the boundary of the event horizon, where space and time are stretched in strange ways. There, as quantum physics describes, pairs of particles and antiparticles continuously appear and vanish. Occasionally, one particle falls into the black hole, while the other escapes. To a distant observer, this looks as though the black hole is slowly losing energy. Not through an explosion, not through a final moment, but through an unimaginably slow evaporation. So slow that for stellar mass black holes, the time required for them to disappear completely is trillions of times longer than the current age of the universe. For supermassive black holes, the scale of time stretches far beyond anything the human mind can meaningfully imagine. Here, the stream of thought can slow down even more, because this death resembles no death we know. It does not come from injury. It does not come from conflict. It comes from a very gentle leakage of existence, a little energy at a time, a little mass in each moment. No witnesses, no mourning, and perhaps that is precisely why it carries a strange kind of beauty. Philosophy has long been skeptical of the idea of immortality. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "All that is from the gods is full of providence. If the universe is ordered, then that order does not favor absolute permanence. It favors cycles. Everything arrives, remains long enough to fulfill its role, and then withdraws without tragedy." When Hawking radiation is placed within this narrative, black holes are no longer symbols of eternal consumption. They become symbols of delayed dissolution. Beings once thought immortal carry within them an ending that is distant, slow, and quiet. There is something deeply healing in this idea, because it suggests that no power is exempt from time. No darkness is preserved forever. Even the deepest regions of the universe follow a shared rhythm, the rhythm of change. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Human, All Too Human, "Everything becomes and passes away." This sentence sounds simple, but when applied to black holes, the most extreme entities in nature, it becomes profound. If even black holes do not stand outside that flow, then perhaps no human fear needs to carry eternal meaning. The stream of thought drifts gently onward. If black holes die by evaporation, what will their final moment be like? Science imagines that when their mass becomes very small, the evaporation accelerates. And in the final instant, the black hole may release its remaining energy in a brief flash. But this would occur in a future so distant that there would be no galaxies, no stars, no familiar structures of the present universe. The death of a black hole, if it happens, will unfold in a universe that is nearly empty. No audience, no witnesses, no memory preserved. Only a very late completion of a cycle that began in the earliest moments of time. Carl Jung wrote in The Soul and Death, "Death is psychologically as important as birth, and like it is an integral part of life. Perhaps Hawking radiation is a reminder that even what is born from collapse is not exempt from this cycle. Death is not the negation of life, but its final balance point. Here, the earlier parts of the story connect naturally. Black holes are born from stellar collapse. They grow, regulate galaxies, prevent the universe from burning itself out. And then when that role is complete, they too withdraw, leaving no clear trace, asking for no recognition. The narration can soften further. Because now the story is no longer about black holes at all. It is about how the universe treats even its most powerful creations. Not with eternal praise, not with punishment, but with permission to exist for the time required. And as you hear this in the night, you do not need to understand how Hawking radiation works. What matters more is the feeling that even things that seem impossible to end are allowed to end. Not abruptly, not painfully, but by slowly dissolving into a shared stillness. At the end of this current, there is no grand conclusion. Only a pause long enough for a gentle thought to appear. If black holes, symbols of darkness and power, also have a quiet death, then perhaps you do not need to hold everything within you forever. Some things can be held long enough and then released very gently. And in that moment, as thoughts thin out, sleep can arrive not as an escape, but as a small, safe, temporary dissolution fully aligned with the order of the universe. After listening to the story of the black hole's quiet death, the stream of thought can continue to drift, not toward an ending, but toward one of the most intense moments in the universe. Yet intense here does not mean chaotic. It means a profound transformation unfolding very slowly, very far away, and almost never witnessed directly. This is the moment when two galaxies collide, and the black holes at their centers begin their spiraling journey toward one another. As two galaxies draw close, the first thing to make clear is this: stars rarely collide. The distances between them are far too vast. This encounter is not like an accident, but more like two immense clouds of mist gradually merging over hundreds of millions of years. Structures are stretched, orbits are bent, and at the deepest center of each galaxy, two supermassive black holes begin to sense one another's presence. At first, they circle each other in a wide, unhurried dance. No rush, no violence, but gradually through gravitational friction with surrounding stars and gas, their orbits tighten. Two dark masses, each millions or billions of times the mass of the sun, spiral inward like two timelines searching for a point of intersection. At this stage, extremely powerful jets of energy may be triggered. Matter is compressed, accelerated, and begins to shine brilliantly far from the center. Merging galaxies can flare like enormous lanterns in the cosmic night, not because the black holes seek to display power, but because energy must be released for the system to regain balance. Then comes the final moment of the dance. The two black holes draw very close. Stable orbits are gone. Hesitation disappears. They merge into one, and in that instant, gravitational waves are released, rippling through space-time itself. Not light, not sound, but the fabric of the universe trembling. These waves travel through the cosmos like deep ripples across an endless lake. When they reach Earth billions of years later, they alter the distance between atoms by less than the diameter of a proton. And though this change is almost imperceptible, humanity has learned how to listen to it, as if for the first time the universe could be heard breathing with great force. These are the most powerful events since the Big Bang, not because they destroy everything, but because they restructure order at the largest possible scale. After each such merger, a new, more stable galaxy can form. A new center is born. A new heartbeat begins. Amid these images, the stream of thought can soften. For although science describes these as extreme events, their essence is very close to human experience. There are encounters in life that cannot be avoided. They do not arrive to destroy, but to bring old structures no longer strong enough to hold toward an end. First comes the spiral inward confusion imbalance, then the collision pain release, and finally the merger, a new form no longer two yet, not entirely one. Carl Jung wrote in The Transcendent Function, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Two galaxies meet and do not retain their original shapes. Two black holes merge and do not return to what they were. And human beings passing through major collisions rarely remain unchanged. Yet this transformation is not pure loss. It is the cost of a new order. Here, the earlier parts of the journey reconnect naturally. Black holes are born from collapse. They keep rhythm for galaxies. They can die very slowly, and in rare moments, they merge not to gain power, but to resolve a state that can no longer remain stable. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy." Gravitational waves remind us that no event is truly isolated. A movement far away leaves traces far into the future. A collision in the past continues to propagate through the present quietly, irreversibly. At this point, the narration can slow even further. No more data is needed. No more records of energy. Only one feeling remains: the universe does not avoid collisions. It integrates them. It allows old structures to dissolve so that new ones may form stronger, broader, more enduring. And if we allow ourselves to hear this story as a very distant, very gentle metaphor, perhaps it whispers something familiar. Not every collision is a mistake. Some are the conditions that allow us to become what we could not previously imagine. At the end of this flow, there is no climax, no explosion, only a deep settling like a lake growing calm again after a long vibration carrying a different shape beneath its surface. And as you listen to these words at night, you do not need to think about galaxies or gravitational waves. It is enough to feel that the collisions in your own life, however intense they once were, may still be spreading in very slow, very deep ways until one day they give rise to a quieter order. And within that quiet, the mind can finally loosen its grip. Not because everything has been resolved, but because the universe never asked you to be stable forever. It only asks that you continue like itself, moving through collisions, then settling long enough for sleep to arrive very gently. After the cosmic collisions have sent their vibrations rippling through space-time, the stream of thought can slow down to listen, not to look, not to measure, but to listen in a very different sense, one that science has only recently learned. Gravitational waves carry no light. They draw no images. They travel like a silent sound of the universe where the very fabric of space-time trembles and then settles again very slowly, very deeply. When Einstein predicted the existence of gravitational waves, he did not imagine that humanity would one day hear them. For gravitational waves resemble nothing our senses are accustomed to. They do not touch the ear, they do not touch the eye. They change the distance between all things just slightly and then return everything to its original state. A touch so gentle it almost does not exist, and if one is not patient enough to wait, it will never be noticed. Perhaps this is why the image of listening to the universe feels so fitting. It is not an active act, but a state of readiness. A readiness to receive signals not sent specifically to us, not adjusted to our capacities yet, arriving all the same, steadily, honestly, and without needing a witness. Gravitational waves allow us to hear events that light cannot tell, the merging of black holes, the collision of neutron stars, movements unfolding in complete darkness. Through them, the invisible universe begins to have a voice, not noise, but vibration. Philosophy has long reminded us that not all understanding comes through sight. Heraclitus once wrote, "The eyes and ears are bad witnesses to men if they have souls that do not understand." Perhaps gravitational waves are science's echo of the same truth. It is not because we do not see that something does not exist. We have simply not yet learned how to listen at the right frequency. When scientists first detected gravitational waves, they were not only testing a prediction of general relativity, they were touching the edge of modern physics itself. For gravitational waves are where the great theories relativity and quantum mechanics begin to meet, yet have not fully merged. With every detected signal, we both confirm what we know and confront what we do not yet understand. There is a gentle beauty in this humility. Science at this point does not declare victory. It opens a door, then pauses, because the next step cannot be rushed, cannot be loud. It can only be taken by listening further. And if we allow ourselves to drift with this image, it becomes difficult not to think of inner life. There are movements within us that emit no light. They form no clear pictures. They vibrate very softly, a vague feeling, a nameless sadness, an intuition that cannot be explained. If we do not stop long enough, we will miss them. Carl Jung wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." But perhaps at times it is not a matter of looking into the heart, but of listening to its very small beat vibrations that require no words. Gravitational waves open an entirely new way of observing, one that does not depend on light, one not obscured by dust and gas. A doorway into the invisible universe where the most important events unfold in darkness. And when that doorway opens, we begin to realize that understanding is not the accumulation of images, but the expansion of our capacity to receive. Here, the earlier parts of the journey reconnect naturally. Black hole mergers create gravitational waves. Gravitational waves travel through time. And billions of years later, a very small being on a very ordinary planet learns how to listen to them, not to control the universe, only to know that it lives within a reality far wider than what the eyes can see. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." Yet like the universe, not every current rises into the light. Some vibrate very softly, very deeply, and reveal themselves only when we are willing to be silent. At this point, the stream of thought can slow even further. For listening, unlike looking, does not require strained effort. It requires release, releasing expectations, releasing the need to understand immediately, releasing even the impatience to name everything. The universe does not speak to us in human language. It vibrates. And within that vibration, there is no personal message addressed to us, no private meaning assigned. Only a very simple truth: everything is moving even when we cannot feel it. At the end of this flow, there is no conclusion to hold on to. Only a very gentle suggestion that perhaps to find peace, we do not need more light. We only need to learn how to listen to very small vibrations in the universe and within ourselves. And as you hear these words in the night, you may not need to imagine gravitational waves passing through Earth. It is enough to feel that right now there are very distant movements still spreading and very near movements gently settling. Between these two, your mind can rest, not because every question has been answered, but because not every vibration needs to be understood in order to be felt. Within that silence, like a receiver with its noise slowly turned down, sleep can arrive not loudly, not abruptly, only as a final vibration fading away very softly in a universe that continues to whisper. And then, after all the movements, after the collisions, the vibrations, the distant breaths, the stream of thought can settle in a very quiet place. Not because every question has been answered, but because there is no longer any need to hold on to them. At the center of this journey, the black hole appears not as an ending, but as a background heartbeat, slow, steady, and never demanding to be heard. In the deepest darkness of the universe, where there is no light to tell its story, order still exists, not loudly, not visibly. This order is not created through control, but through yielding to time, to cycles, to forces larger than human understanding. A black hole does not need to shine in order to keep a galaxy alive, and the universe, it seems, does not need to be fully understood in order to continue. At this point, it is difficult not to feel a gentle resemblance to human life itself. We often believe that only after we have understood enough, thought enough, asked enough questions are we allowed to rest. But the universe does not operate that way. It does not require consciousness to keep pace with every movement. It simply continues very slowly, very patiently, whether or not anyone is watching. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together." Perhaps in the language of the universe, this means accepting the rhythm you are within, even if you did not choose it, even if you do not fully understand it. For that rhythm is not working against you. It is holding you. Human beings within this immense cycle are only a very small part, but small does not mean lost. A heartbeat does not need to be loud to keep a body alive. It only needs to be steady. And in this moment, as you listen, as you breathe in and out, you too are participating in something far larger, not through action, but through a very gentle presence. Carl Jung wrote in the Red Book, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. Perhaps that unknown part within us is not a problem to be solved, but a space in which to rest." Like the darkness in the universe, not an enemy of order, but the condition that allows order to exist. And here the journey can close without the need for a clear final mark. No summary is required. No meaning needs to be carried into sleep. The questions have completed their work. They have brought you close enough to stillness. You do not need to keep following. You do not need to remember. You do not need to try to understand any further. Let the heartbeat in the darkness continue thinking for you. Let the universe do the rest. And if you feel yourself drifting, that is not losing your way. That is the right rhythm.